Hey everybody, it's Murgle. And today, this is going to be a rambling video, but I told myself, I wanted to eventually talk about this because I thought maybe, if I share this, maybe it'll help somebody. And it's not a very happy story, I can tell you that much. And it's a sad story because it's about my life, but it happened. And I always say that, the way my life turned out, I'm glad it turned out that way because I think it wouldn't have made me the person I am. If it would have been different, maybe I would be different. And I don't want to change who I am. I like who I am. And, I always say if there's anything in life that I want to do right, it's I want to be a good parent. If I fail at everything else, that's the one thing I hope I do right. Because I came from really bad parents, so I know what it's like to be a failure, and I don't ever want to be that. And that's what I want to share. You know, the only person I've really ever, divulged most of this to is my wife. And, well, I mean, it makes sense, but if I can share this and maybe change one person's outlook on life or help somebody that's in possibly a similar situation, I hope it does that. And so, anyways, you guys know I was a really lonely kid, but it wasn't entirely because I was just not a popular kid. I kept to myself a lot, and that was because of my upbringing. See, from my mother was. I never really hung out with my father. He was never around. I mean, he sent me a birthday card maybe once every 5 years if I was lucky, and that was it. That was my interaction with my father. My mother was a bad drug user, an alcoholic, and she was a prostitute for most of her life. Um, and uh, I don't personally remember if I've ever been like molested or physically abused like that. I've been beaten to like inches of my life, but I don't know. I probably at some point was molested. I can't remember it because I've suppressed so many bad memories in my life that I'm sure it happened at once. There were a lot of creepy people that came in and out of our households. She took me to very, very bad places all the time. And I imagine it happened at one point in my life, but I don't remember, and I'd rather not. I don't want to think about that stuff. So it's best if I can't remember it. You know, if it happened, at least I don't remember it. I remember certain things that kind of make sense if it would have happened, but I don't remember the actual acts if they did happen. So that's one thing I can say. I guess I didn't suffer through. I mean, I would have suffered it, but I just can't remember it because I've suppressed so much stuff in my memory of my childhood. And so I grew up. Let's discuss. This is a log video, by the way, because I'm going to ramble for a long time, and there's a lot to share. So I grew up, and the farthest memory I can remember back is my first person that I guess I would call dad, and his name is Jesus. He was Mexican, yes, he was Mexican, and amazing man, one of the best men I'll ever meet in my life. And I remember all the good stuff, but he ended up moving us to Mexico, and my mother took me, and we lived in one of the most downright horrible places in Mexico, ghetto, very, very ghetto is the only way I can put it. And this is the farthest memory I can ever think back. And I don't know if this kind of shaped my life. Maybe that's why it had such a big impact on me. And I guess it gave me the idea that, no matter how much bad there is in the world, there's always that hint of good. And that's why I always try to stay really optimistic, because this is the memory I can remember. My mother sent me with one of my stepbrothers to go pick up milk at the store down the street. And he was 12, I was 4. I remember this memory vividly. We went down there, we went and picked up milk, and as we were leaving, we get mugged, and the guy stole our milk and what little change we had left. We were very, 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 very poverty level. I mean, we were broke. And he stole our milk, and I remember crying because I knew I'd get beat if I didn't come back with the milk. She would blame me. My mother blamed me for everything that ever happened to her. She was one of those points the finger at everything kind of people and always blame me for everything that happened. And I was crying because my stepbrother wasn't all that upset because that kind of thing happened commonly, but I knew I would get in a lot of trouble for not bringing milk. And I remember the store owner. I don't know if he was specifically the owner, but he was the clerk in the store. He calls us back in, and he put some money in the register. So I don't think he was the owner. I imagine he was just a employee. He put money in the register and bought us another milk and told us to go ahead and take that one and go. And I remember feeling a lot of joy for that moment because, I mean, something bad had just happened to me, and then somebody, he essentially rescued me. I know it sounds silly. Obviously, it's not nice that I just got mugged by some adult as a 4 and a 12-year-old. Got mugged by an adult, but I mean, I remember feeling a lot of joy for that moment because, that was my hint of hope in every situation. And I'll always remember that memory. Of all my life, I don't know. I've always been able to remember that memory vividly, and I guess it just had such a strong impact on me. And it continues. We're with Jesus for a couple years, and he's doing his best. And we end up moving back to Indiana, which is where I grew up. And we end up moving back to Indiana, and he, he's got a good job and stuff. And he actually had managed to make my mom go clean for a little bit. She wasn't doing any drugs for the first year she was with him. But then she gets back into doing crack when she made it back to Indiana, because I guess she most likely met back with her connections because we're in the same state, and it ended up going bad and downhill from there. And, my dad, or Jesus, whatever you would like to call him, tried his best to stick by her, but she ended up finally corrupting him too, and he ends up selling drugs, and he gets thrown in prison. So there she is, single mom again, with no money and a bad drug habit. So we moved back with her parents, my grandparents. And best person in my entire life is my grandfather on that side. And he always referred to me as son, and not in the, like old people always say, hey son. No, he meant like actually as if I was his son, because I think he felt like he failed as a parent, and he hoped to redeem himself with me. I mean, there's nothing you could do. I don't think you can really save my mother. I know that sounds bad. You should never say anything bad about it, but my mother's always been a bad person, and I always think she will be because she can't learn to love herself. And I think that, causes a lot of damage to you. And in any case, we're living with them, and we end up moving out again, and she hooks up with this guy named John, one of her sugar daddies, I guess is the term you would say. And we move between 13 different states in the next 5 years, and I just remember her lots of bad stuff. I became essentially her slave at that point, because when Jesus was there, he did a lot of the stuff. Like, he was a good dad, I would say, and he took care of the house, and he did everything I believe a father should and tried to do. And but when John came around, John was nice to me. I mean, he never once laid his hands on me or did anything like that. But my mother, he didn't do anything either. He was a very, I guess, lazy individual is the way I'd put it. And my mother essentially looked at me as a slave. I have a burn, and I remember this event vividly too because of this burn. When I look at it, it reminds me of it. But I've been cooking food since I was 6. I had to learn to cook at 6, which I don't think any child should even be cooking anything aside from mixing the chocolate chip cookies before they're 10. And I had to learn how to cook real meals at 6. I had to clean the house, because if I didn't do it, 1, she would beat the living shit out of me, and 2, it wouldn't happen if I wasn't doing it. But this is the burn. I don't know if you can even see it on there. It doesn't focus very well. I burned my hand right there, because I remember cooking on the oven top, and I ended up melting my skin, and she said, oh, it'll go away. That's great mothering skills for you right there. But no, between those years, um, I remember if I forgot one thing, I'd get beat. I had black all over me because she would just knock the shit out of me. She was still prostituting. I imagine John was in a way her pimp, probably. I don't know, but she would beat me, and it was always in places that you can't see. Like she'd knock me in the back of the head, so the bump wouldn't really show because of my hair was really bushy. If I let my hair grow out, it gets into an afro. Um, she'd hit me where I'd wear heavy clothes. You can't tell I had welts all over me. She'd break things on me if she got really mad. Like if I forgot to clean plates improperly, sometimes she would just throw the plate and it'd shatter over me, and I'd get cuts on me and stuff. And you know, uh, I remember knowing that wasn't the way you're supposed to live. I guess, I just knew it was wrong, and I didn't like what I was in, and it was bad, and I knew it was bad, and I knew this wasn't how people should live, and I honestly wish I was dead a lot of times. I was suicidal a lot because we were moving so much that I didn't have any friends really, and I was always just wishing that I was out of that situation. I was wishing someday, because in the neighborhoods we were being in, gunfire wasn't uncommon. I was wishing one day somebody would just shoot our house. I remember thinking those things like, why can't somebody just have one of those drive-bys at our house and things like that? And I was just hoping stuff like that would happen to me. And I know that's horrible, horrible ways of thinking, but I wanted to be out of my life. Um, while doing this, I still maintain good grades, and I was, I guess, what you'd consider the perfect student because I did my homework and I was never late. I didn't have anything else in my life other than having to clean the house and doing homework, and it gave me some kind of relief. I loved school because I wasn't at home. That was the way I looked at it. And that if anything, my and it didn't help too. My mother was always putting me down. She said, "You'll never amount to anything." She's always telling me I was worthless because I would forget something. Like it was just, she was always really really bad. But finally, I turned 13. I remember around 13, she breaks up with John. We move back to Indiana, and she gets a house close to her grandparents, or my grandparents, excuse me, her parents, my grandparents. And it was from my great grandmother had died, and she moved into that house. So we stay there, and she finally gets what I consider semi-stable of a life. And she ends up getting a job at the most ironic of places. She gets a job at a mental hospital taking care of mental patients. And she was like a prison guard at a mental prison, is the way I can, I guess, a mental facility prison. She was a prison guard at one of those. They call them caretakers, but in her case, she's essentially a prison guard at one of those places. And I remember thinking, I was like, I thought it was a joke at first because I mean, if anything, she belongs there and she's taking care of them. I know. But anyways, she ends up working there. And this was where I would consider it, my life became better but also worse. She's working there, and after she started working there, she's still taking a lot of drugs. She didn't really ever stop. She still does that, I'm sure, to this day. But she ends up having me piss in a cup every day and putting it in the fridge. And I know that sounds absolutely disgusting, probably to some of you, but she would do it because if she ever had to take a piss test, this is what she would do. It sounds gross. You're gonna think it's disgusting. She would put that cup of piss in the microwave, heat it up, pour it into a condom, and then stick that condom under her breast so she could smuggle it into her job if she ever needed to pass a piss test. That was my daily life. I'd have to come home, piss in a cup, put it in the fridge so she could use it. Yeah. I had to do that as well as my normal chores, right? I had to take care of the house and all kinds of stuff. Well, one day, um, I forgot to take out the trash. Okay, simple thing. I'd done everything in the house, but this day I forgot to take out the trash. Um, I wake up at 3 a.m. because she worked uh, like between night shift and second shift. It was like this weird shift in the middle, and she would come back. She would work from 2 o'clock until 11, and sometimes overtime until 3. And this time she'd worked overtime till 3. She gets back at 3, and I had forgotten to take out the trash. I'm laying in my bed, which I've never. This is the first time in my life, by the way. I'm living in this apartment. First time in my life I've ever had a real bed on a actual base. But most of my beds have always been just a mattress on the floor, if that. If I even had that, usually I was laying on the floor. But in any case, I was on my mattress on the floor, and I had forgotten to take out the trash. She comes home, takes the trash can, and dumps it on me while I'm asleep. I have to wake up for school the next day, by the way. Dumps it on me and says, "Why the fuck did you forget to take out the trash?" And kicks me while all this trash is on top of me. And of course, I said, "I mean, what do you want me to say? I'm sorry." I was crying. She kicked me full force with her really heavy duty work boots in my side, and obviously it hurts. But I remember saying, I was like, "Well, I forgot. I'm sorry. It happens. I'm just human." And I was crying, of course. And in any case, I had to pick up all the trash, and then end up going to the school the next day. And I remember it hurting a lot because those boots were like very heavy duty, probably steel plate boots. I don't remember, but I remember it hurt a lot. And I was grabbing my side all day, and on the weekends, because we were so close to her parents' house, my grandfather, I would go to his house on the weekends. And I remember being in so much pain, because that hurt a lot. It hurt a lot. Just imagine getting kicked in like the side of your ribs. I probably broke a rib, and I never went to the doctor or anything, so I don't know. But at the time, it was probably broken, and it hurt a lot. And I ended up going to my grandparents that weekend, and I told him, and he ended up calling her angry, and he was very mad at her because he did try and protect me, to his best of his ability. But I kept holding myself, and I knew it hurt a lot. And he ended up calling her, and she got mad at me and threw all my stuff outside. And he's like, "You can come stay with us." And then like 2 weeks later, she complained to him, said she was going to call police if he didn't let me come back, and blah 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 blah. And I ended up going back with her, which honestly wish I wouldn't have, but you know I guess everybody wants to have a relationship with their mother, and as twisted and demented as mine was, I still hoped for it. I ended up going back with her, and I was there for a couple years. Same thing. I got beat regularly. If I messed up, stuff happened, and I don't know why I didn't go to police. I guess, like I said, I just wanted a relationship normal. I didn't want my mother to get in trouble, but at the same time, I didn't want to leave her. I don't know. And in any case, this is when my life finally started changing. I turned about 16 at this time, and I was playing WoW, and that's when I met my now wife, which really changed my life. And I'd talk to her. I'd say how my mother was, she was the first one I expressed anything to because I felt like somebody I could trust and talk to. And, she really helped me. She's like, "You shouldn't go through that kind of stuff." And she made me feel good about myself for once in my life. I've been told my whole life I was going to amount to nothing, and I felt like trash every day, hoping I would just die. And she changed it. And one day I told my mother, I was like, I'm not gonna piss. This is the last time I'm gonna piss in a jar for you because, you should really change. I hope you change, and I want you to change. And she got pissed. You know what she did? She took that jar of my own urine and splashed it in my face, and then threw the jar at me and said, "You can go fuck yourself," and took a knife and tried to stab me. So at that point, I went to my grandparents, and again, she threw everything I owned outside, some of it into the fire pit that we had in our back door, and, just slung everything out and said, hope to never see you again. I ended up staying with my grandparents until I was 18, at which point, um, I had called my now wife and said, you should come stay. If you want to come down here, we could probably figure something out. And she ended up staying with me at my grandparents for quite some time. And then we ended up moving to Canada from that point, and eventually from Canada back to Indiana, because I said this time span had been maybe 3 years, and ended up saying maybe she's changed. Maybe she needed to be away from me to realize that she appreciates me or something. And um, ended up we came back to Indiana, not too far off of where everybody would have lived, my grandparents and everything. And I ended up, calling her and saying, hey, I'm back in the vicinity, um, I want a relationship. I'd like to be able to have a normal life with you. And my wife's pregnant, and, I want you to be a good grandmother. And I thought maybe my child would change her a little. And she apologized. She got all sad. And she's like, I'm sorry. I know. I want to be different. And in any case, I believed her. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to truly believe my mother could be a good mom. And, well, we ended up living there. And then, my child's born. I invited my mother to come watch my child be born. And she came, and she was, she seemed like a different person. I really, really thought she had changed. And I was like, it's possible. Yes, it's possible. Everybody can change, I guess. But I shouldn't have believed it, because I ended up believing her. And so in any case, she says, you know what, you guys are in a financial situation. Here, let me come stay at my house. You can have this room, which it was the same house that I had left, so I knew exactly what she was talking about. She's like, you can have this room, and, you stay as long as you need. I'm a different person. I want to help you out, and blah, 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 blah. I believed her. We moved in with her, and she had replaced me with dogs, I guess. She wanted something in the house, and it was dogs now. So she had 3 dogs, a huge Mastiff, like 2 mutts, and my child was at this point in time 1 to 2 months, between 1 and 2 months, and very, very small. And this Mastiff was 180 pounds. He was gentle giant. Don't get me wrong. I loved that dog when we were there. He was very polite, and just he was really big. My wife would stay in the room a lot and close the door, and he was in fear that the dog might hurt the baby, not because he was mean, but just because he was so large. He liked to lay on people, so it wouldn't be a surprise if he laid on our little tiny baby. So she would close the door to our room regularly so the dog couldn't get in there. And my mother, who I thought had changed because, she still smoked and drank a lot, but, she never did it in the house in fear of, surprisingly, she had no problem abusing me, but she didn't want to hurt our child. So I was like, maybe she really did change. But no. One day, when I got home, we were in the room, and we'd closed the door, and all I hear is bang on the door, and then I crack it open, and then I see something flying at the door again. I close it really fast. She was throwing things at the door, and she's like, you don't want to let me see my little granddaughter, you fucking moron, blah, 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 and slinging things at the door. At this time I was, I think, 19, around 19, and maybe 20. Yeah, it'd have to be over 20. And in any case, she's slinging things at the door, and I was like, "What are you talking about? You never said anything." And she's saying we were locking her out so she couldn't see her granddaughter. I never once told her she couldn't open the door and come see her. I said, your dog's huge. We just don't want it to hurt our little kid. And she's slinging stuff at the door and says, no, you fucking liar, blah, blah, blah. And she takes a knife and stabs it through the door. And at this point, I open the door. I'm like, you're going to have to stop. You can't act like this. I accepted it when I was a kid, and I'm not gonna accept it for my kid. And she ends up freaking out, and I'm just trying to hold her back because she was trying to attack my wife for absolutely no reason at all. She had no reason to want to attack my wife, but she's a psycho. That's really the only reason. And in any case, I'm holding her back, and my wife can't take it. She's like, she just couldn't take it. She grabs the phone and called the police. My wife started strangling me. She's like, "How dare you call the police?" Literally choking me, trying to choke the life out of me. And I couldn't hit her. I don't care what happened. I just couldn't hit my mother. I wanted to so badly. I wanted to throw her. I wanted to fling her. But I mean, I couldn't. So I didn't do anything. I ended up shoving her off me, though, so she'd stop choking me. I grabbed her arms. I went in the room, closed the door. The police arrived, and they arrested her. They arrested her. I had my own, and they asked, "Do you want to press charges?" And I thought back. I was like, I said, yeah, I do. My daughter's birth was the thing that, really turned it around for me. I was like, there's no way I want this kind of person in my daughter's life if she's going to be like this. I thought she had changed. I wanted her to change. I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt. People change. She didn't. I pressed charges. She ended up getting, this is kind of like, she had to go to classes for anger management and stuff because it was her first offense, which obviously wasn't her first offense, but it was the first offense she'd been arrested for. So she ended up getting like a passover, like I forget the name of it, where you don't have to go to trial. It's to avoid going to trial. So she had to do all these certain things, and she blamed me for that. She's like, "You had me arrested." She says, "I'm a horrible person who gets their mother arrested." And I was like, "I didn't do anything to you. You did this to yourself. You brought this on yourself. I never, if anything, I would be what most people would consider the perfect child. I did everything. I tried to do everything. And all I ever felt like was a disappointment. I tried to do everything in my life to change. But no matter what I did, nothing made her happy. And that's never going to change. I didn't talk to her for a long time after that, like 3 years. I didn't once message her, and she messaged me on Facebook out of the blue one day, and she's asking about Rebecca, which is my child's real name, and we call her Lolita all the time. But she's messaging me about her, and she's saying, yeah, many of you wondered what the tattoo that says her name. To answer a lot of questions, by the way, I did that to myself. But anyways, she's like, "What's Rebecca doing?" I was like, "Well, she's a little over 3 now, and she's talking now." And she's like, "Okay, well, is she potty trained yet?" I said, "No," which at this point in time she is potty trained. My daughter learned on her own. Every child's different. Don't ever put expectations on a kid because every kid is different. I said, no, she's still using diapers at the time, which she was a little over 3. She was a late one to potty train, but nothing wrong with that. I don't think you should ever expect anything of your child. Let them do their own strides. Nobody's the same. She's like, well, this is the point where I decided I would never speak to my mother again. That's why it's very important you hear that, because this is the point. And she's like, well, what is she, retarded? She asked me that specifically. If my daughter was retarded, she's like, you learned to potty train when you were just over 1 and blah, 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 blah. And I said, did you just call my kid stupid? Did you seriously just refer to my kid as stupid? She's like, well, I mean, she must be. She's not potty trained yet. I lost it. I really did. I exploded on my mother at that point. I honestly don't feel any urge to have a connection with her ever again after that. At all. Because that point right there, you can do whatever you want to me, but I will always do anything in my power to protect my kid. Something she never did. And it was at that point I realized I never want to have anything like that in my life or anything like that to affect my kid. I love my daughter. If I can ever do anything in this world, it would be that I hope I'm a good parent. If hearing this, helps you in some way, I hope it does. Because I know there's a lot of people in situations similar to mine. I really do. And I hope this can help people. If I could ask you to share any of my videos, it'd be this one. Because the world is filled with a lot of situations like this. But remember, there's always some good. My wife was the good for my life. She changed my life, and so did my daughter. And I, I hope you find the good in your life someday. Because it will come. It will come. It really does. It may take a long time. And I thought about killing myself a lot. I really, really did. I wanted to die every day. And it really does come. I know it feels like it doesn't, but I promise you someday you're going to feel good. And it's all going to feel better. My parents sucked. But if your parents, I want you to think right now at this point, if you felt like your parents were bad to you, I want you to look right now and think, were they as bad as you really thought they were? I know a lot of teenagers exaggerate and say their parents are horrible, but I want you to think right now, are your parents that bad? And if they're not, please call your parents and tell them you love them, because the only thing that brings me the most joy in my life is knowing my kid loves me, and I hope she always will, because I find it hard to find love from my mother. I still do, and I never won't. I'll even probably cry at her funeral, but I don't want to be part of her life, and I want my kid to be part of mine. And if your parents weren't as bad as you think, seriously, call them and tell them you love them. Thank you all for watching. Please share this, so I hope I can affect as many people as possible. And I will see you again soon.